Hi, I'm Femi Oke.
And I'm Dan Ming, and you're in the stream.
Today, does the pro-democracy movement have a future in Hong Kong? We'll also look at whether the one country, two systems policy is changing for the region.
Time and time again, severe pressure pushes the people of Hong Kong into a state of heartbrokenness and giving up. Every one of us has a responsibility towards Hong Kong's future and Hong Kong's path to democracy.
All of us Hong Kong people say it loud again for those in government to hear. So many of us will hold on. Hold on. Hold on.
What you just heard there were some of the voices from a rally on Sunday protesting the jailing of 3 student activists. They were leaders of Hong Kong's 2014 Occupy Central sit-in, also known as the Umbrella Movement. In recent months, Hong Kong's pro-China government has taken a number of measures against those calling for greater rights and political autonomy. This also includes the disqualification of several pro-democracy legislators who use their swearing-in ceremonies as a platform for anti-China protest.
As Hong Kong marked 20 years since the territory's handover from British to Chinese rule last month, China's foreign ministry said the formal treaty, which is supposed to guarantee the city greater freedoms than in China, is a historical document that no longer has any practical significance.
So, how sustainable is the one country, two systems framework? With us to talk about this, Agnes Chow, a committee member of the pro-democracy party Demo Sisto. Lung Kwok Hung, also known as Long Hair, is a politician and social activist. He was one of the pro-democracy legislators disqualified from the Legislative Council in July. Junius Kwan Yu Ho is a lawyer and politician who supports China's current relations with Hong Kong. And Elaine Yu, a Hong Kong-based journalist with AFP. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for staying up late for us. Ray Chan is a parliamentarian. Let me show you a tweet that he shared just a few days ago. Huge turnout today. Release all prisoners of conscience in Hong Kong. We stand together. Occupy Hong Kong. People power. Junius, look at this gathering. When you saw this, when you followed this on the news, what were you thinking?
It was quite alarming, actually. That was the scene that we saw in 2014 when the Occupy Central took place. It really impressed us with a very deep memory, even up till now. The scene, as we just now see, as if it just happened so long ago, but time flies quicker than we expected. It has already been 3 years.
Elaine, I'm just wondering, this pro-democracy movement in Hong Kong, is this a fresh energy? Is it re-energized? How would you explain what it is right now today?
Well, I believe... Yeah,
I'm going to go to Elaine, Junius, and I'll come back to you.
Sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, it's... organizers of the march have said that it's the biggest turnout since Occupy. So after Occupy, there has been some just splintering into different factions with people having different ideas about how the democracy movement should move forward. Some people have been calling for a high degree of autonomy and even independence, so like a complete split from China, or like just various degrees of autonomy and self-determination. But so people have been having different ideas, and there wasn't really a consensus about how the movement should go forward. But with the big turnout, people are really seeing this as a galvanizing movement for the future because, yeah, a very prominent activist called Lester Shum, he actually saw it as a way to unite people because many people are very angry about the jailings of umbrella movement leaders, so they see it as a point to rally together and put aside their differences for a while.
So, Elaine, you mentioned the jailing of those student leaders. I have a video comment here, and Junius, I'd like to get you to weigh in on it. This is from Yao Wai-ching, and she's an activist, and she was also one of the politicians who was disqualified after she staged a protest during her taking of oath for office. Take a listen to her.
When you're talking about the cases with Joshua Wong and other people who were put into jail, I would say that it's totally unjustified because it's obviously a political suppression. Before 2015, maybe in 2014, they were already executed because of those cases. And in this year, the judge redefined the case and put them into a jail. And it is totally because of the political agenda they related to the government, and so it is totally unjustified.
So, Junius, these three activists were already, they'd completed their community service, which was their sentence, but then they were resentenced again to jail time. Why was that?
Well, let me put the things in the right perspectives in the first place. These three accused were prosecuted for the crimes that they committed way back in 2014, September. And the trial itself took place sometime in 2016, and whereby it was only at the very low level of the judiciary, namely the magistracy level. The magistrate found that despite them committing the crimes, they were purported to have the political objective and admiration, so therefore they were only sentenced to social service order. Upon review of this sentencing, it was considered to be grossly inadequate to address to the severity of the crimes itself. So therefore, the Secretary for Justice took the matter further up to the Court of Appeal. And the hearing itself just took place early this month, and the verdict was passed down, handed down on the 17th of August. So therefore, everything was done in accordance with the books and also the rules and procedures. So it was not really the case that the accused themselves having served the sentence.
I can't really agree with
you. I'm sorry.
All right, so we're hearing dissent. Agnes, you go first. Go ahead.
I think in the first place.
Long hair, I hear you. I'm just going to let Agnes finish, and then you can pick up. Agnes, carry on.
I would say that the Hong Kong government is trying to use some legal way and trying to use the law of Hong Kong to solve the political problem in Hong Kong. But this is, never a useful method. And because, for the legal case of the three student leader of the umbrella movement, the legal case of them had originally filed with the voluntary community service order of them, and they have completed all of the community service they have to complete. But actually, it's the government, it's the Department of Justice of the Hong Kong government use public funds to start a review of the sentence again. And the government, firstly, they try one time of the review of sentence, but it failed. And then the government tried the second time to use the way that they can use.
Agnes, so let me just bring in long. Agnes, let me just bring in long hair. Long hair. How do you analyse what actually happened? Community service and then jail time. What would you say with that, in a nutshell? What's happening here from your perspective?
First of all, a lot of people fear of the rule of law will turn to be the rule by law. But actually, what happened here in Hong Kong is not even close to rule by law. It's rule by degree. That means someone up from behind in China, like a figure like President Xi Jinping, if he wished that separation of power will cooperate to the executive power, that means, as my friend Mr. Ho said, that the DOJ will try to appeal, and then the court will cooperate and to fit the mind of Mr. Xi Jinping, rule by degree.
So I disagree with
someone
such a
need to be punished under the name of rule of law, but actually it's rule of degree. I tell you what, Mr. Xi Jinping came to Hong Kong in 1st of July, and actually he talked to the separation of power, 3 arms, and he said that you need to cooperate.
I think Long Hair has already got something wrong in the chronology.
So
Xi Jinping did not interfere with our judiciary in Hong Kong.
A trial.
So
it's a purge.
So Long Hair and Junius, I hear you, and I hear that you disagree with each other. I want to bring in some more voices into this conversation. Hold tight for a moment.
So we got this tweet, and I'd like to read it to you, Elaine. Kong Sung-gan, he actually wrote a whole book on the umbrella movement in Hong Kong, he tweeted us, he said this: on the mainland, the Chinese Communist Party can target its enemies directly, but in Hong Kong, it must work through the Hong Kong government, which these days is little more than a proxy. Elaine, is there this sense in Hong Kong that the government there is just a proxy for China these days?
I think a lot of people certainly see it that way. Carrie Lam famously said to the BBC that she has to come out and say that she is not a puppet of Beijing. So I think that is something that people suspect. But there's also another saying that the elites of Hong Kong, like the Hong Kong government, for example, is also taking very active steps. For example, the prosecution by the DOJ to jail the student leaders have been seen as a concerted effort to overturn a lower court's ruling. So it's always hard to try to see if there are people pulling strings or the elites are acting out of their own volition. So yeah, there's a degree of debate in that very topic.
Carrie Lam is the chief executive of Hong Kong. Junius, what were you going to say? Go ahead.
Well, first of all, the three young lads who started off this pro-Occupy Central event in the first place. They already stated that, so they would face the consequence of their breaching the law. In fact, they knew perfectly well that at the time when they did all this, they would face the consequences. It had nothing to do with the political prosecution or whatever. In fact, it's a very simple case of breaching the law and breaching the peace. And what they face with in this case is a classic prosecution of the criminal who just committed the crimes. It might have some relevance to the political setting behind, but it doesn't necessarily mean that even in any political campaign, anyone who did anything wrong simply because of their committing the crime, and then that automatically render themselves to be a political offender. So
I'm sorry.
I guess one at a time. Long Hair has been saying, I don't agree with you. Long Hair, make your point briefly, please. Agnes will come to you in a moment.
Those 3 young lads need to face the consequence. But the point is that those judges of the appeal court of Hong Kong, they say that there were violence emerged. But the fact is that there were no violence involved at that light. So they will face the consequence as the offense of unlawful assembly. But what happened in the Court of Appeal is that, okay, there is offense of unlawful assembly. Why there is no leniency? Because there were violence involved. It's totally...
I think as one of the students advocating civil disobedience in Hong Kong, I have to clarify very clearly that all of the activists, all of the students who advocate civil disobedience in Hong Kong, we believe that for civil disobedience, we have to accept the legal punishment that we have to accept.
Right.
But the point is, why did the government, why did the Department of Justice have to review the sentence of those
Junius, I hear all of you. We're going to push on a little bit because I don't want to spend this entire show back and forth with this case, because there's a bigger picture here. I'm going to go to the bigger picture just because we have only so much time. Dan.
So we have this post here. We got it via WhatsApp from a man named Robert Chow. He's a journalist, and he actually created his own counter-campaign to combat the Occupy Central movement. Agnes, I want to read this to you. He said, the pan-Democrats have been promoting a misconception that one country, two systems can mean some form of independence or semi-independence for Hong Kong. Now, the people of Hong Kong do not want independence. They want to be part of China. Agnes, what do you think? What do the people of Hong Kong actually want?
What our party is advocating is actually self-determination of Hong Kong, that we believe that all Hong Kong people should have the right to decide Hong Kong's future by a democratic way. That is a referendum. So if there is such a lot of different kinds of opinion in Hong Kong, we should have a referendum or voting or something to decide whether or to see what is the point of view of Hong Kong people, or what is the political stance of Hong Kong people. So I think that we should use a democratic way to decide Hong Kong's future.
Let me bring you back into the conversation. Let me show you with something from the Straits Times here. Headline, China says joint declaration with Britain on Hong Kong autonomy no longer has meaning. How did that go down in Hong Kong?
Well,
I think a lot of...
Elaine. Long hair, I hear you. I'll come back to you.
I think a lot of activists are not happy about that because it is supposed to be an agreement that will protect Hong Kong's autonomy for the next 50 years, and it is an internationally recognized agreement. So both parties, the British and China, has to both uphold it. So yeah, I think many pro-democracy activists aren't happy that China isn't standing up on their side of the agreement.
Longhair, when I say to you one country, two systems, it's 20 years on since this one country, two systems framework has been in place. How's it working?
Well, let me have the argument like that. Why there is a thing called American revolutions emerged? Because at that time, the Blitz is the tyrant at that time. So if you want people not to claim their independence, treat them well. You know what I mean? If you can let them to choose their own leaders, to choose their own political system, and then it will be all fine. Think about that. Why should those Englishmen who stay in America need to say that, okay, enough is enough, no taxation without election? Okay?
Representation. Mm-hmm.
Representation, okay. That is the point.
Well, I think the Longhair's analogy is not really too appropriate in Hong Kong context. Actually, Hong Kong has always been part of China, which is unlike America.
In America,
at that time, big continental colony.
It's a subject of the United Kingdom.
Taken by the British. So the situation and the political setting would be totally different. It can't really be compared as such. If one really looks at Article 12 of the Basic Law, we know full well that Hong Kong has always been part of the Chinese territory. And although we do enjoy a high degree of autonomy, we are always directly under the Beijing's the Central People's Government. So therefore, it's not really open to us that we can vote ourselves out and to seek for a referendum that which is to the effect of closer to independence. So this is totally politically impossible.
No. You get me wrong. You get me wrong.
To do it in accordance with the basic law.
You get me wrong.
So,
if the Chinese authority want to have a statement to the Hong Kong people whether the Hong Kong people should enjoy freedom, democracy or not. So if China actually prevail as a democratic country, there's no problem at all.
So I'd like to bring in the economic side of all of this, Longhair. So obviously, Hong Kong is valuable to China partially because it's such a hub for foreign investment. And Elaine, I want to read you this tweet from Alvin. He says, the Hong Kong government has long engaged in selling the rule of law. It is only valuable insofar as it is attractive to business, and recognition by the Hong Kong government that there are political prisoners in Hong Kong would be catastrophic to that strategy. Elaine, what do you think about that?
It's interesting because one of the first people or a prominent group in the beginning of Occupy Central in 2014 were financiers who thought that a lack of transparency and information or a lack of rule of law would actually hurt the financial prospects of Hong Kong. So they do think a fairer political system with transparent information would help the financial sector. And of course, this is a wide-ranging issue. Like, inequality is such a big problem in China, in Hong Kong, and a lot of people think inequality also stems from the fact that it doesn't have a representative government. So words like rule of law and words like democracy, I think there isn't, or even like what the Constitution means, which is called the Basic Law in Hong Kong. There seems to be very different understandings about what it means. You have politicians framing the rule of law as one thing, you have activists understanding the rule of law, and scholars understanding the rule of law as a very different concept.
I would say that the Hong Kong government is keep using the term rule of law as a shield to debate against all of our applications, including civil disobedience, and saying that we should obey the law, whether the law is just or no, we should only obey the law. But I can only say the Hong Kong government does not really understand the true meaning of rule of law, because rule of law is talking about the law itself should be just, and also the legal system of Hong Kong should limit the power or the authority of the Hong Kong government to suppress
I think Agnes has already got it also wrong, and she is confused with the role of the judiciary and also the role of the government. There's no evidence whatsoever that the Hong Kong judiciary is subject to the influence of the administration in HongOng, let alone the Beijing's influence. So therefore, the rule of law concept is not something
just... Hold tight for a minute. Allow Junius to finish his thought.
My opinion.
It is not a notion that is to be understood by an individual or two.
Agnes, allow Junius to respond. Just give him a moment.
Yeah, it is a notion that is universally accepted to be of international standard. The rule of law is not just what we profess to be the case by ourselves. It is understood in the sense that it is solemnly and seriously considered by the judiciary. The judges consider this notion in the context of the international standard in terms of the common law principle.
So I'm just going to wrap up. Long hair and Junius, we're out of time, so I'm just going to ask you to hold tight for a moment. Junius and long hair, just give me a moment, literally, because we're at the very end of the show. There's something that we noticed on the stream. This is Denise Ho. She is a pro-democracy activist. She says here, Hong Kong's 16 young political prisoners. And just look down here at how young these young people are, these young politicians, activists are. Elaine Yu, about 5 weeks ago, he was still the youngest ever elected lawmaker. This is Nathan Law down here in this picture. And let me just leave you here with Joshua Wong. He says you can lock up our bodies, but not our minds. We want democracy in Hong Kong, and we will not give up. Some of the words here from the young people who are fighting in Hong Kong for more democracy. We will continue this conversation online, always. #AJStream. Thanks for watching, everybody. Take care.